Greetings programs, and welcome to the reason why I haven't done a video in the last day. It's City Skylines, and I was aware this was coming out. I wasn't planning to buy it on launch, but I was definitely interested because all of the previews have been generally quite positive about it. And as it turned out, I didn't have to buy it because it was actually gifted to me by Manty111, who's one of the circling. So a big shout out to Manty and a big thank you. It's not the first time he's gifted me stuff. It's always appreciated. So, it is a city building game, obviously. We're looking at a city that I have built already, and it's by a Finnish developer called Colossal Order. And they previously did Cities in Motion, so it looks, I think, reasonably similar to that. I've never actually played Cities in Motion, but it's a good deal more complicated. They've actually gone for a full city building game, whereas Cities in Motion was more of a transport network building game. This is actually almost going to be a review, and it's the first time I've ever really done anything like a review. But there's a reason why. I've played a lot of these games in the past. The first game I ever played on PC, possibly even the first video game I ever played, was SimCity 2000. That's what I grew up playing. That and a bunch of the other Sim series like Sim Farm, Sim Tower, even Sim Earth a bit. So I've got form there. I played SimCity 3000 a whole lot as well. SimCity 4 didn't play it that much, but still quite enjoyed it. SimCity Societies and SimCity I never did, and I don't regret not playing them, but they were both games that they felt like they were crippled by EA's meddling basically, and that has ultimately resulted in the demise of Maxis, which was quite sad indeed. Having played all these games in my childhood, it was quite sad to see Maxis go. But then EA's done this before. The other games I played a lot in my childhood were Theme Hospital and Dungeon Keeper. And Bullfrog was another victim of Maxis, so yeah, exactly, we have been here before. And there are many other studios that have shared the same fate. So anyway, Colossal Order, they've had ambitions, clearly. They wanted to do something a bit more complicated than Cities in Motion. And I think they've largely succeeded. It's a pretty fun game for what it is. But I will say, it feels quite limited in some ways. There are definitely some missed opportunities. There's a few specific irksome things that I feel are missing. But for the most part, it's just what's there is good, but it feels a little bit limited compared to, say, SimCity 3000, SimCity 4, even some of the older other city building games I've played over the years, the Impressions series particularly, Pharaoh and Caesar 3, which I've actually still got the boxes for those. Back in the day, when video games used to come as a tiny jewel case rattling around inside a huge box alongside a nice thick manual. So, yeah, I have some prior form with these games, shall we say. So there's elements I recognise from those games, but even those games feel a bit more like they've got a bit more meat on their bones, as it were. So this is fun, but it feels a bit lacking in some way. However, there's already modding support built in right from the start, and there are already mods appearing in Steam, and that's, I think, partly because it's inherently, if you look on the main menu, there's actually, you can look at buildings, you can customize the appearance and tweak the properties of buildings already in the game. I haven't investigated trying to make your own buildings yet, but that might even be possible. You can also immediately make your own custom maps, and there are already custom maps appearing as well on Steam. So moddability is going to give this game legs, because SimCity never really had moddability. I'm sure there were people that tried to mod the game, but I never really, like, it never had that much of a modding scene. Although SimCity 3000 especially, or was it SimCity 4? No, I think it was 3000. They had the building exchange website where you could basically create and share and download custom buildings, and that was a nice feature. It had its own little building creator, so even that isn't especially new. And I have to say, there isn't much that this game does that's new. It feels like a very solid kind of old-fashioned city building game, and a lot of it's nice. I mean, it does borrow heavily from other games, and I'm actually this is not my first attempt at recording. This is me demonstrating the road building, and I'll actually quickly do that because infrastructure is very important in this game. So you've got your straight sections, and it shows you actually the exact amount away from the roads where the zoning will occur. So we can build just straight 90-degree sections, and this is with angle snap turned on, so it snaps to various degrees. But even when you've got straight sections, it will let you build curves. We can build custom curve sections, and that lets me customize how much curve I want. And then we can also go completely nuts, and this is freeform, and I can just go like that. And it's very easy to make sort of quite organic feeling road patterns, and there's bits of the city over here where if I click out of that, it looks like it was a thing that was built. It's not just been laid out in a grid, although you can do that as well. That's what I was experimenting over in this area, was just building a more kind of SimCity 2000-esque grid pattern, and you kind of had to in SimCity 2000. There wasn't much choice, although SimCity 3000 and SimCity 4 gave you more options in that regard. So roads are quite important. Public transit is, you know, they've got some prior form with building transport networks. Railways are built in exactly the same way, and I should point out that actually bridges and roads are built from exactly the same place. I hit page up and then page down, so that's basically how you do bridges. It's super easy. There's also a nice, I didn't point it out either, but there's a nice upgrade feature. So I can upgrade the same width of road but with road decorations which reduce noise pollution, or I can upgrade to a wider section of road. There's also one-way road, but you can't upgrade to one-way roads. That's actually quite annoying that you can't upgrade to one-way roads. It'd be really useful if you could. But in terms of other kinds of transport, well, there are buses, and buses are the very first thing you get access to, and they're quite easy. You just plonk down a bus station, wherever I put that, there we go, bus depot, and that's where all the buses issue forth from. And if I look at my public transport overlay, I can see all the bus routes, and it's actually a really nice little feature, and I'm guessing it's carried over from Cities in Motion, but I recognise it from Simutrans as well, and Open Transport Tycoon, which is another couple of transport network building games. But it's very, very intuitive. It's just click and drag basically. So if I wanted to, I'm trying to find an area that doesn't really have a bus network right now. Let's say I just want to have a really simple bus network that goes around this loop of road here. So you literally, if I select buses and I click on the little bus shelter, and that creates a new bus line. You just literally put down the dots and it will create bus stations where you put down those dots. It doesn't even have to be connected to your bus depot. And that's it. Voila! I've created a bus network. Trains are exactly the same. I didn't mean to click on that overlay. Where are we? There we go. Trains are exactly the same. I'm a professional. Don't try this at home. Yeah, I've never done a review style thing before, but anyway. You can build freight train stations. They kind of run automatically. They connect, well, you connect them up to the existing stuff. You'll get passengers coming in from outside, so even if you just build one train station, it will get some use but not much. But if I connect it, as I have up here, to this train station over here, well, you see there's actually a train line running on there, and I've actually got plans to add one down here as well. So that's all fairly simple. And there's also metros, underground networks, and they are very expensive, but they're very space efficient. So I've got a loop, one loop going around there, and I've got kind of spurs going over here, and I've got a separate loop over here, because as far as I can tell, you can't actually link them under rivers, and I don't know why. Because obviously in real life, of course, subways can go under rivers, and it's not like you have to go through a bridge, or yeah, I don't know why, but you can't do that, and that's one of those little things. Like, there's a lot of little things that feel like that they could be in that are missing, but what's there is pretty good. Overlays, I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. Things like the traffic overlay, red equals the problem areas, upgrading your roads as you go along. I mean, the upgrading process is quite nice, unless there's something fixed in the way, like, say, a park, for instance. If I want to upgrade to a 4-lane road with trees, I can't do it there because it's a park, but if I wanted to do it there, I also can't do it because it's the metro station, but if I wanted to do it there, there's another park. Well, I've not picked a good place to show that. Okay, here we go, that bit of road there. So what will happen is it'll automatically demolish those houses, and it pushes the zoning slightly further back. And the zoning is very, very tied to the roads in this. You can't zone outside of the roads. So if I wanted to plonk down some housing zones, for instance, it's very connected to... Like, I can't put houses over here and then build a road over to it. I've got to build the roads first. And it kind of makes sense, but it leads to some weirdnesses. Like, this is supposed to be a farming area, but it's all lots of little itty-bitty farms. It doesn't look particularly great, but that's how the game's decided to do it. And that leads me on to one of the only really new things that this game does as compared to other games that I've played, and that is the district system. And districts are nice because they let you fine-tune your city policies. So, as you can see, I've got various ones set up, but I don't have the whole city blanketed with districts. For a lot of places, it doesn't matter. But, for instance, if I wanted to... let's say this crescent here. Let's create a new zone. So what I'm going to do, it's very easy. You just paint it on. And there's actually these painting tools with the regular zoning tools as well. And that's abutting up to another district, but they are both separate. And it will automatically come up with a name. So it'll say Franklin Park, okay. And I can click on that, and I can see policies. Now this is a residential area. There's only residential buildings there. So there are various commercial and industrial policies. They're not going to apply. But I can do things like I can say, right, you're going to use water meters and you're going to use power meters. So they're now using less power and water, but it costs me extra. And you could just do this blanket wide. You could use these policies blanket city wide. Did I say blanket wide? I did. And it applies to all the existing zones as well. So anytime you make a global change, it applies to all zones and unzoned areas. But I can also do things like, if I go city planning, I can say I want high-tech housing, which will increase the land value slightly. I can also say I want a high-rise band. So if I decide to, say, rezone, and we'll do that. Tweaking is very nice in this game, by the way. Tweaking your existing things, what you've built already. So we'll actually just pause it, and you can see it all happening at once. And I can just right-click, and that gets rid of the zones. And I'm using the fill zone tool at the moment. There's also... you can use the more familiar marquee tool, so I could kind of right click and go. It's a bit awkward given the orientation, but I can basically right click and get rid of all that. And as you can see, the zones are they're quite separated out. But if I wanted to then left click, and that's filling up all those zones, or I can use the fill tool, or I can even use this paintbrush and I can just paint it all in. So there's a variety of ways of doing it, and it's quite nice that there's a variety of ways of doing it. Mostly I use the fill tool, but sometimes it's useful to use the brush tool, or something else. And you can't just overwrite an existing one, you have to specifically delete it first. So we'll unpause it, go out the zoning view. Also apparently there's a body in the park. There will hopefully be a hearse along to collect that. That's a thing that you have to worry about, is building cemeteries and crematoriums. So all those existing houses have gone. My population has shot down because all those people are suddenly homeless and they've left the city. But it's now building high density. It's building high density housing. Although I slightly missed those two. Where are we? Filter tool. There's probably hotkeys for these. I haven't discovered what they are yet, but they probably are. And it's building high-density buildings. And they start off with a low level. Now, this is very familiar to me from the Impressions games. Pharaoh, Caesar 3, and Zeus as well. I played a little bit of Zeus back in the day. But basically, you start off with level 1 buildings. And as the building level goes up, the building appearance changes. And the desirability of the air, the land value, the happiness of citizens, the education level of citizens, these all matter. So these are all very low level buildings, these are all very high level buildings, and in fact residential high density eventually gets you skyscrapers. But with the high rise band that I've put in place, you actually get buildings like these, and they are actually capped. So you don't get very tall buildings appearing, and also they don't go up to their max level, so it limits how many people actually live there. So if you want kind of medium density residential areas, you still use high density residential zoning, but you use that specific ordinance. The other thing that you do with these areas is you can create special industrial zones. Now, back to zoning. There's one kind of industrial zone when you put it down. It's all exactly the same. The way you tweak it is with the districting system. So this is a regular industrial zone. These are all fully upgraded factories. They've only got 3 upgrade levels, and that's all, again, it's tied to your worker education level. And by the way, this game, I mean, it does what SimCity 4 kind of did it. There were specific citizens that you could track and follow, but it had a limited number of them. But this game does all of them. And they all have an educational level, they all have somewhere where they live, basically. And so they all will go back and forth to their workplace every day, and they'll go via car or they'll go via public transit. It's a nice little feature. It's probably why at 23,000 this is considered a big city, even though it's not. But anyway, back to the zoning. So that's just a regular industrial zone. There are specific kinds of industrial zones that you can put down, though. So with exactly the same zoning, I've actually made this a forestry zone, and I've done that by creating a zone and making it a forestry industry zone. And I've done exactly the same down here with farming. Although I have to say, these itty bitty farms, it doesn't, no. Like in SimCity 3000 especially, getting the exact conditions right was a bit tricky, but you could do it, and you could have one farm that would be like the size of almost this. Certainly the size of this inner bit of road here. That would all just be one farm, and it looked pretty neat. You could actually try and specifically build farming communities. There's also oil zones and mineral producing zones, and we can actually look at the natural resource overlay. So yellow is areas suitable for farming, green is suitable for areas for doing forestry, and down there that is an area suitable for mining. And there's even oil producing areas on this map, but I don't know, that's just within my boundary, so I could potentially build over here and have a little oil producing area, and those goods would be produced, some would be used inside your own city. And my police headquarters is on fire, that's slightly embarrassing. And we can actually zoom in and see if, and this is all autonomic, by the way. This just all happens automatically, that your emergency services respond to various things. Yeah, goods and services. I'm not quite sure how it affects the city economy. There's like a lot of stuff that's quite kind of opaque, but it's there happening behind the scenes anyway. So I probably should start wrapping this video up. I don't want to keep wittering on and on for half an hour. Right? I could go into the specifics of this, but at the end of the day, like I said, it feels like this is a good start. It feels like there's a lot missing, that there's a lot that could be here, that might be added via modding. And the road thing especially would be really nice if you could change road types to single track. I really hope that's something they can add, that either modders can add or that Colossal Order themselves add in. There are other little things like public transit is, you can try and encourage people to use public transit as much as possible, but there's no such thing as bus lanes. If you could convert your wider roads to have bus lanes, for instance, to improve traffic flow that way, because there's a lot of buses on the road at the moment, that'd be nice. Things like cycle lanes, things like trams, they're not there at all. You can obviously build, I mean, you can build extended overhead roadways. You can even build you could build highways that, I mean, the kind of the default highways are all just sat on the ground, but you could actually build elevated highways. But you can't build multi-level roads, for instance. That would be something that might be nice. Oh, you can't build, oh, you can't do elevated highways. That's disappointing. You can do elevated 6-lane roads, but you can't do elevated highways. So that's, or did I actually have the right button there? No, I did not have the right button. That's all. I was not clicking the right button. So you can have elevated highways, and you should just ignore me, because I don't know what I'm talking about. So there's just a lot of little things that were in previous SimCity games, that are in Simutrans, Open Transport Tycoon, that are in other games that I've played, that would be really nice to have in this game. And while it is a satisfying game to play, it just leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of something I would look for in a city building game, as someone who is a self-professed veteran of those games. So I would give this a cautious recommendation. I would say what's there is solid, but it's a little bit lacking. Although, obviously, the caveat is some of that will be added in by mods, and we might even, because it's published by Paradox, we might even get lots of itty-bitty DLCs coming along. Although, personally, I would prefer to see just a couple of big, chunky, proper old-fashioned expansion packs to go with this proper old-fashioned city-building game. So, there we go, my first attempt at a thing like a review. I don't know how successful I was. I probably missed a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't want to go into too much detail, otherwise I could easily be here another 20 minutes. But hopefully I covered all the important points. I will be interested to hear your feedback. Once again, big thank you to Manti for gifting this to me. I'm actually, despite my somewhat minor criticisms, I am definitely enjoying this, but it's kind of made me want to dig out SimCity 4 and give that another go as well, so yeah. Slightly counterproductive in that regard when you play a game and it makes you think, huh, actually there's this older game that it's made me want to go and play. Anyway, but I feel like it's alright. And hopefully you felt this review was alright as well, so if you did, you can leave any comments and feedback below. You can hit the like button, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.